But it's taken long before we had this chat again.
Well, I haven't been able to find you. And each time I see you, you are running around and doing other things. I've always been ready to sit down with you. And now you have me, or better still, I have you now. So
okay, no, that's fine. Fortunately, we are here, we are together.
Yes.
So we'll speak about the issues that South Africans want to know about. Maybe let's just kick off, Mr. President, with the recent developments at the international stage where South Africa featured quite prominently. I mean, it's no longer necessary to go back whether we won or not. I think it's common cause that that which we went there for, perhaps by and large, you were able to achieve. But are you not worried about the nature of the relations with some of the countries that actually are steadfastly supporting Israel, given what we've done as a country?
No, what we initiated was a process that is very much in keeping with the ANC's principles. And in many ways, these are principles that should be embraced by everyone. The respect for human rights, for the treatment of people with dignity, with respect, is what I would like to believe that everyone in the world embraces and wants to see. And better still, we went to an international court that was set up before we were free. It was set up by the world powers, by even the Western countries. They are the real custodians of that court. So we were taken a bit aback when a number of countries said, why did we go to that court? Where else could we go if we believe that there is a dispute between our country and another country on an issue of human rights, an issue on which our foreign policy is pivoted, an issue, may I add, which we were taught by the father of our democracy. And when he said our freedom would not be complete until the freedom of the Palestinians is attained, we took it to heart as the inheritors of what he started. So we went to not a kangaroo court. We went to an international court that has high standing. And when we got there, we put forward a cogent case, a well-argued case by some of the top leaders, both in our country and in the UK, who represented us. I now call them super legal eagles, because they put forward an absolutely convincing case, which in the end was heeded by the judges of the International Court of Justice. And in the end, it is no longer our issue. It is now the issue of the International Court of Justice, because they have ruled on it. It now belongs to them. So whoever blames us really should be blaming possibly that court. But on top of that, all freedom-loving people in the world are speaking out in support of the actions that we took to pledge solidarity with people who are suffering. And may I quickly add, we have also spoken out against what Hamas did on the 7th of October. And it is not like we've brushed it away or pushed it under the carpet. It is something that we've spoken about. Even now, we are also saying those hostages who've been captured should be released. But at the same time, we would like Israel to act in accordance with what the court ruled. Many people may argue that it didn't rule in favor of a ceasefire. But when you read that judgment very carefully, it said Israel must ensure that the killing of the Palestinian group must stop. It talks about the harming of either psychological or otherwise must stop. And all those things can only happen if there's a stoppage. And we expect Israel, like what we would do if an international court ruled against us as a country on any issue, we would say, we must respect the rule of law.
And comply.
And comply. And similarly, as a self-proclaimed democratic country, we expect them to comply like everyone else, including those who were against us for taking this action. They have said, now that the court has ruled, they must comply. So I don't see any risk, because in the end, as many of those countries who said that our case had no merit are now saying, yes, they must comply with the ruling of the court. So the blame should now be shifted away from us if we were ever to be blamed. But even then, we don't believe we are to blame. And even if we're to blame, we would be blamed for standing for justice and standing for the right cause. So in this case, South Africa is on the right side of history.
What do you make of the cut in funding by some of the mainly Western powers to the Palestinians after this judgment?
Well, they seem to be reacting against what is said to have been the participation of some of the UNRWA's staff in the attack on the 7th of October. And this is yet to be proven, and it is unfortunate that as people are suffering, aid is immediately cut. And I would have said, shouldn't they wait until there is proof? But even then, I then see it once again as collective punishment.
And most of those countries are those who were opposed anyway, who felt our case was meritless. And as you sit down and reflect on this and look at, because many of them are actually our key allies. So, and then we take this kind of a stance, and then they react in this manner. So what does that tell you about countries like America, UK, Japan? I mean, those are all our key allies.
Well, we've been having good relations, and we want to continue having good relations. This should never really stand in the way of continuation of good relations between us and them. And countries do differ from time to time on a number of issues. And we've never pretended that we agree with many countries around the world on every issue, including those that we are deemed to be closest to. Yeah. So principled positions should be that when there is a difference, countries should be able to discuss those issues through diplomatic channels, and we are prepared to do precisely that. Minister of International Relations will be going to the United States, and so she will be able to go to any other country to explain our position in full, because we do not see this as an act that should lead to the breaking of relations. Our relations with those countries, United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, are just too deep to be severed because of this, because there are relations at a personal level, at an economic level, investment level, and what is required is that there needs to be diplomatic discussions, and there needs to be continuation of relations. At the same time, the citizens of most of those countries are in full support of the imposition of a ceasefire. They're in full support of the case that we took to the International Court of Justice. So there is a bit of a dichotomy there, which they must deal with themselves, because their own citizens have come out in full support of what we have done. And similarly, in our own country, many people, South Africans, by the leaps and bounds, if one can put it that way, have come out in full support of what their country has done, and including even Jewish people. A number of them have said, yes, this killing must stop. There needs to be peace in the Middle East, and that is why our position has also been that this must now be a moment when there's a resolution of the conflict, where the two parties go back to the negotiating table and negotiate. And just to take the same path that we took, the ANC was also seen as a terrorist organization, but in the end, there were negotiations that were led by the ANC, and where there was a settlement. And so you make settlements of disputes with your enemies. And we say this is exactly what should happen.
Well, it does appear that you are very keen on ensuring that relations with those countries remain intact.
Yes.
But I think the country where it seems that our relations with will never be the same again from now is Israel itself. I mean, from the resolution that your party, the ANC, took of downgrading, and the resolution of our own parliament to say we must close the embassy there. So how do you look at our relations with Israel now, given those issues I've just mentioned?
Well, we are two countries, and countries never really become enemies forever. And in this case, we don't see Israel as an enemy. We don't. We see Israel as an independent state, and what we have reacted against is what has been done, or what is being done to Palestinians. And we have not severed our relations, and we are saying this problem needs to be solved. We want the problem to be solved so that our relations can continue into the future. And now an independent agency has come out to give a ruling that we should now utilize to resolve this problem. First this war, and thereafter a political problem, and thereafter the diplomatic problems or challenges are then solved. So we see ourselves as being an agent of change. We see ourselves as playing a role in, if they so wish, in helping to mediate also, together with others, of course.
I'm asking this, Mr. President, because our own parliament has resolved that we close down the embassy.
Yes.
By the way, are you in support of that?
Well, the Parliament has taken a resolution, and they have called upon the executive to consider doing so. And they have also said what they are pivoting it on is that there should be a cessation of hostilities or ceasefire, and there should be a resumption of the negotiations. So we ourselves have called for that. And what did the executive do? The executive acted in a much more forthright manner. I think the decision or the action that was taken by the executive, by the cabinet, was much more stronger and much more forthright. And it is something that we are utilizing, that we have utilized to address this problem. Other matters which the Parliament have sent to us are matters that we will continue to exercise our thinking on, and where we will also discuss it in full as a cabinet. But as a cabinet, we've taken a decisive action to address this problem. Yeah, and it's much stronger as well.
Yeah, but I think the President is not perhaps answering directly my question. I said, as the executive, are you in support of what Parliament has resolved on?
Parliament has resolved. That's another arm of the state.
Yes.
And they have said we should consider. Yes. And it is a matter that we are going to be considering. We are going to consider, but maybe you're not hearing me clearly. in dealing with this problem, because it is a multifaceted problem, as cabinet, we've taken a much more decisive step, much more decisive by going to the heart of the problem. And the matter that the Parliament has asked us to consider, it's a matter that we are still going to consider. And the governing party has said we should close down the embassy. That also is a matter that we have acted on in terms of withdrawing our representatives from Israel. So we are approaching this matter from all angles. And it's not that the executive is one-dimensional. We are looking at it from all angles. And as you will have seen, we have taken decisive action on this matter.
Yes, I mean, yes, certainly downgraded, I think, the embassy there.
Yeah, that's right.
Into a liaison.
Yes.
But I'm just not sure what makes it difficult for the executive, especially when the governing party is very clear on this one.
Yeah.
Backed by the parliament, which includes other political parties.
Yeah.
So what is difficult?
There's no difficulty. But maybe you are not hearing me.
Okay.
I am saying that the Parliament has decided on this matter and has said we should consider. Yeah. And that is precisely what the executive cabinet is having to do. But in the meantime, the cabinet has taken a decisive step of taking Israel to court. There's nothing much more decisive than that. So whilst we've taken that action, we then consider as well the proposal that comes from Parliament. And so it's a multi-pronged approach that we are using. And at the same time, we have to act as the state. We have to act as government. And Parliament has decided, we as the executive then give consideration as they have asked. They said, give consideration, and so therefore it is the executive that has to give this consideration. But we have acted, and no one can accuse cabinet for sleeping on the job on this one, because we've taken decisive action on 2 counts. Yes.
It would seem that, I think we are about to wrap up on this matter, Mr. President. It would seem that Israel, on its part, I mean, is already taking active steps. I think one of their airline, which has been operating here for years, so is stopping, I think, in March. And the possibility of them imposing sanctions, does that worry you?
Well, I'm told that the El Al will stop flying in March because there's lack of demand. So this is a commercial issue more than a political one. So we will wait for them to take whatever political action. And the issue of sanctions being imposed on us, we will not have decided. If they do so, we will act in concert with world bodies on issues like that, because we, as a member of the international community, firstly a member of SADC, member of the AU, and member of the UN, we will follow largely what is decided by those types of bodies. So in the end, our actions will also be informed by a whole number of things, including what informed our action now was the horror and the killing that is taking place in Gaza, which is what made us to take the action that we did.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. So we'll continue the discussion on a different path now. So I think we've dealt with that area because it was quite important. We'll just go and take a quick break, and then we'll continue with the President after the break. in the country, discussing a range of issues. So we're dwelling on some international issues that the country has been engaged in quite forcefully, as you could hear, even the president, when we spoke about them. But let's deal with issues closer to home now, because that's where there is his bread and butter. Mr. President, at the January 8th statement, you spoke about 28 million people on social grants.
Yeah.
Is it something to be proud of?
28 million people who are supported and assisted by government are assisted and supported because of the situation they find themselves in. Because they are people who are old, they are children. We support children from day 1 to 18 years. Many countries also do that. Many countries support old people. We also support people who are disabled, and we support people who are vulnerable in one form or another. And now, due to COVID, we added, if you like, another 8 to 10 million people. So these are people who need support, who need the support of all of us as South Africans who pay our taxes, because we need to support their livelihood, because they did not decree that they want to be in the situation that they are in. So every government in the world, in one way or another, does find that it needs to support people. There are other countries that are welfare states that by definition have said we are going to become a welfare state, we are going to support our people. Now, our people have suffered over many years through what we inherited from the past. Poverty, lack of assets, and lack of a good education. So that has driven our people into the terrible state that they find themselves in. Now, it was only during COVID that we decided that we're also going to support the unemployed, which we had never really done. But because the COVID period almost compelled us, because we imposed certain measures against all our people, and we needed to come out in support of them. And this is the support that they have found to be really beneficial to them. Through that, we've been able, we're told, to reduce like food poverty by 2 million. And that has had an impact. And some people who work in that sector say, had we not instituted the SRD relief, the 350, poverty would have been worse by 5% even. So I am happy that we are supporting our people. Ideally, Mzwai, we should be having lesser people on, say, if you like, the welfare system. We should be having more people working. We should be having more people able to look after their own livelihoods. But we are where we are, and government had to respond to that, because we could not just leave our people suffering without government responding.
I think you've explained it well in terms of why you're doing what you're doing. But that has somehow, I know you tried to say we are not a welfare state, but it now has elements of a welfare state.
Yes.
So that's why my question was, are you proud of what we're doing? Yes, I understand you're happy with the kind of support, but it is getting into being a welfare state. And then when our tax base is shrinking, so is it not the failure of government or even the governing party to create employment or conditions that would attract investment, which will allow people to get jobs?
Yes, it's not a failure. We don't see that as a failure. Helping and supporting the livelihoods of our people can never be a failure, because there are welfare states in this world that can be seen as failures. Of course, the real challenge for us is to increase the tax base and to increase our revenues. And right now, our revenues are under challenge. They're really, really strained. And that is where our challenge comes in.
Yeah.
And that is why we're doing everything we can to implement our reforms, to ensure that we are able to reboot our economy. This past years, the past 5 years, have been years of recovering from a whole number of things, from state capture, recovering from COVID, recovering from the July 2021 unrest, from the floods, and also from load shedding. So this has been a period of recovering and rebuilding. Many other places could have collapsed completely. Now, our economy has proven to be resilient. We lost more than 2 million jobs as a result of COVID. We've regained those jobs. Those jobs are back. We are increasing jobs. COSATU president today at the opening of our Electoral said, yes, we've increased jobs by, say, 5%. That's a figure. But what it is saying is that we are seeing an increase in the creation of jobs. This economy has never really created more than 1 million jobs in a year. In the past period, we've done exactly that. Either jobs that were lost and jobs that have been created. So we are seeing an upward trend, despite the challenges, despite the difficulties that we are going through. So we are on the move. And the other important thing to attract investment is that we've embarked on reforms. We are reforming our electricity generation. We're now going to work on expanding our transmission. We are addressing our ports. We're addressing our rail. So a lot of things are being done to recalibrate our economic landscape in preparation for the growth that should ensue. And that is when, for instance, challenges like, are you making too many people dependent, then begin to wash away, because we will then have increased our tax base, our revenues will have gone higher, and so forth.
But here is the contradiction to what you are saying, Mr. President.
Yes.
Currently, we are in austerity measures by Treasury.
Yes.
So which means not a lot of activity is happening. In fact, some of the doctors that complete their compulsory training have to look for work elsewhere because they can't be employed. And yet you need that kind of employment. So some of the skilled personnel leave the country to seek employment elsewhere, also affecting our tax base. At the same time, we have this huge number of people on social grants. So is that not a contradiction that we are engaged in such austerity yet want to grow?
No, there's no contradiction. Let me just remind you that there's a lot of talk and debate in the country now for a basic income grant.
Yeah.
And a comprehensive support system that should be there. And this is supported by the unions, by the churches, and everyone. So many people in our country want to see an expansion of assistance measures to our people. At the same time, we are working at the same time on reforming our economy so that it can be able to carry that burden. Now, of course, we are going through challenges right now because our revenues have come down. And this happens to many countries. Countries go through challenges, Mzwai.
Yes.
We are going through a particular challenge, and we are correcting that. Even those who are not able to get jobs now, be they doctors, be they social workers, be they ordinary workers, the tide will turn. We are putting measures in place to repair our economy, to put our economy on a better footing, so that we are able to create jobs, so that even the measures that Treasury has put in place no longer become a feature of our fiscal architecture, because we are going through this patch where our returns have become lesser, and we are working to have those returns increased.
And we have load shedding.
Load shedding is a problem that we've been pretty honest and upfront with our people. And a number of mistakes were made in the past, and we are now having to deal with those mistakes. But the important and good thing is that we have embarked on a process of reforming our energy sector by ensuring that the public sector plays a role, but the private sector also plays a role. And we've attracted more than 70 billion rand of investment in renewables. And this, much as it is a difficult time, is going to stand us in good stead as we introduce and go on with the reforms that we are involved in now. So, difficult period, but our tomorrow is going to be a lot better.
Just before I go to the break, Mr. President, I know in the past we've spoken about load shedding and the timelines and we keep pushing them back. Are we ever going to have the end of load shedding within the sixth term that you are about to conclude in the next 4 or 5 months?
We are working on bringing the incidence of load shedding further and further down. And yes, we will see an end to load shedding. Load shedding is not going to be a permanent feature of our existence as a country. We are going to solve the load.
End it at some point.
Yes, we are definitely going to end it.
Months a year?
I would say we've got a few months that we're going to be putting in place corrective measures.
Yeah.
So in a few months, we will be able to have solved the load shedding problem.
Before or after elections?
Well, we are going to bring the incidence of load shedding further down, further down. We don't know when the election is going to be, do we?
We're coming back to that question. I'm coming back. As we take another break, I think we will then engage on when is the president going to announce the elections. Well, we're back with President Cyril Ramaphosa discussing a range of issues. And of course, this is a very important year for the country as we're heading into the elections. His party would want to go back and govern the country. But of course, Mr. President, South Africans will decide whether you are still the right people to govern the country or they'll give it to other parties. Maybe the first question, you have been given this opportunity by virtue of being the leader of this country to at some point communicate to us when the elections will be. I know you can't say it now because you want the processes, but can you at least indicate when are you likely to announce when the elections will be?
Well, the election date will be announced soon, shortly, so that South Africans get ready for the election. This is an election year. We are bringing an end to the 6th administration, and once the people of our country have decided who they would like to take the country forward in the form of a new government, we enter into the 7th administration. So the election date is definitely going to be announced soon.
Does soon mean State of the Nation address?
The election date is going to be announced soon.
Okay, so you're not prepared to say when, Mr. President. Maybe let's take a guess and say the State of the Nation address the President will announce.
The election date will be announced soon.
Okay, I tried my luck. Mr. President, in fact, talking about elections, a couple of weeks ago, I think former President Jacob Zuma said something which people interpreted very differently, to say he would want these elections to be transparent so that they are not rigged. And then people felt, I mean, does the ANC rig the elections? What is it that they do to the elections? So do you have systems in place to ensure that there's transparency, everything is clear, and there's the credibility is absolutely unquestioned?
I was startled by that statement from former President Jacob Zuma, because it was really unbecoming of someone who has participated in elections and seen how our IEC works and has accepted the outcomes of a number of elections over years, to hear that coming from him. Our elections are some of the best run elections in the world. Our Independent Electoral Commission is highly respected in the world, is very professional, they are very efficient in the way they run elections, and their systems cannot be faulted. They cannot be faulted because of their transparency. Whenever we hold elections, it is as transparent as my two hands, because everyone who represents parties as a party agent is there. They look at people as they come in to vote, and on top of that we have observers from all over the world, from our own region, SADC, from the AU, from UN agencies, and from all over the world. Not a single one of them has ever doubted the process and the outcome of our elections. And when voting takes place, after voting takes place, the ballots are counted in the presence of every party that is represented. As the electoral officers count, they open them, I'm told, they put the paper there, they say this is for this party, that party, everybody sees. And after that, they are then tallied transparently, and then a document is then written out from this voting district. So many people were registered, so many voted, and so many voted for this party, and so on. And everybody sees the piles and then signs off. And that document is then pasted on the window so that everybody can see. There's just no way you can rig elections in South Africa with that type of transparency. We've put in place one of the best systems, both IT, both manual, and remember our elections are manual. You count every ballot paper. So there's no room for trickery, there's no room for any rigging. So anybody who talks about rigging, they have their own intentions. Because I've also heard talk that once they expect to get 2/3 majority, and if they don't get 2/3 majority, there will be instability in the country. I mean, we are not a banana republic. We are a democratic country where there is rule of law, and the people of South Africa will not accept talk like that. They will not accept a tendency like that. That will not be allowed here in South Africa. The freedom we have was hard fought for, and the right to vote that our people won, they're not going to be robbed of that because they exercise it with care, with caution, and transparently. I want to make that very clear.
And I think what perhaps further compounded the matters was that even the former Secretary General of the ANC said something similar. And then people said, I mean, these are the people who were running the ANC. What's happening there?
Even if they were running the ANC, they are not the IEC. I am not the IEC. I am not in the workings of the IEC and would never want to be. So I don't know, how the IEC finally does it. What I do know is what I see as being transparent. And everything that the IEC does is transparent, it's open, and all parties participate in the formation of their rules, their processes, their counting of election ballots, and their announcements. So I just don't know what they're talking about. It smacks of the type of talk that losers would always want to accuse the process because they know that they are not going to be the winners or successful. We trust the system. It's a system that's enshrined in our constitution, in our laws. And we always will be ready to accept any form of outcome because we trust the system that we've put in place.
Maybe, I know earlier on the Secretary General communicated about the former president. I mean, he is the former president. I mean, you are his successor. And it would be also interesting to hear from you. You've got to find yourself taking this decision of suspending the former leader. So are you worried about the kind of impact or perhaps the confusion that he may have created amongst the ANC support base, former President Zuma?
No, I'm not worried. I mean, he's a free agent. He has decided to go and support or form another party. And the NEC meeting this weekend took a decision that he should be suspended in terms of the rules of our Constitution 2560, where if there are exceptional circumstances in terms of things that are done by any member of the ANC, we are immediately able to suspend that person. And having suspended them, yes, they will have the right to be able to present their case at whatever time. But as we speak now, Jacob Zuma has been suspended by the African National Congress because he said that he is going to support this party, which many of us believe he has formed. And on top of that, he says he wants to remain a member of the ANC. And the ANC constitution does not allow that. Once you define yourself as being allied to another party, you bring into question your own membership, and that is why the NEC took the decision that it has taken.
Mr. President, you used to spend a lot of time with him you were his deputy in government and in the party, so you spoke all the time. Did you, during this time, perhaps pick up the phone or send emissaries to say, what is happening? Can we sit down and talk? Did you engage in those? Because it's never happened that a former president of the party would form another party while still saying he's the member of the other party, of that party.
There have been processes. There have been also meetings that he has had. The Secretary General has written to him. So there have been those, but all this came as a total surprise to all of us. Because for a former president of a party, let alone a former president of the African National Congress, it is something that is unprecedented. So the NEC discussed the matter, and having discussed it, it then took this decision.
Maybe a bit of reflection. As the party president, you've found yourself presiding over possible departure of the former president and the Secretary General. So how does that make you feel, given that, I mean, you've lost the Secretary General, obvious, through expulsion, and now you're probably going to, given what is happening, expel the former president. I mean, how does that do to the renewal, to see some of the two senior members leave under your own tenure?
Well, it's not even under my tenure. It is a process that is owned or that is being processed by the ANC as a whole. The ANC is on a path of renewal. And we are finding that those who are acting in a way that militates against renewal are finding themselves outside the ANC. So the renewal of the ANC continues unabated. We continue to renew ourselves, to improve ourselves, and on that way forward movement, we will find that there are those who are going to fall off because the renewal process is such that it will, define other people outside.
Well, Mr. President, we haven't spoken, we haven't had this time to speak for a long time.
Yes.
I'm sure we can speak until the whole night.
Yes.
But once you correct the fact that we need to speak regularly, we're not going to struggle with the issues. We'll be able to process issues quickly.
So I tell you that I am always available. It's you that I have not been finding. So I will come after you now so that we can talk a little bit more.
It's a deal.
It's a deal.
Well, that was the president of the ANC and the president of the country, President Cyril Ramaphosa, chatting to us about a range of issues. Of course, we're about to go into the election season. We'll have a number of engagements as we await him to make that announcement about the election date. Back to you, Iman and Bongiwe.
Mzwandile Mbeje in